Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July. 4th of July.
Rishi Sunak is today calling you spineless, chickening out of weekly TV debates.
Jeremy Corbyn being expelled from the Labour Party, standing as an independent candidate.
4th of July. 4th of July. And we will have a general election. 4th of July. General election. 4th of July.
Live pictures of a boat approaching could be taking the 10,000th
general election. 4th of July. 4th of July. 4th of July.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. What's up to the people in the live chat tonight? Thank you so much for joining us, for taking an hour out of your life after this week. It's been a hell of a week, hasn't it, guys? Rishi Sunak channeled the personal responsibility and small government sensibilities by throwing himself in front of the firing squad that is the British electorate and smallening, for want of a better word, his governing party to what we hope will be extinction. Guys, the campaign that's followed that announcement has been a case study in haphazardly, poorly planned political communications, ranging from, not bothering to read a weather report, to staging questions from covert Tory councillors, to challenging Starmer to a debate that he's already had most weeks of the year, every Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Right up to today's figurative and literal stop for the Titanic. Starmer is between 20 and 26 points ahead, depending on which polling agency you rely on. Sunak says he's absolutely confident that he will win, though, which is, God, gift my children the self-confidence of a privately educated political failure. Please. Elsewhere in the brimming and bubbling vat of shit and piss that is the political landscape, a British guy allegedly working as a spy for China, he was from my hometown, he was found dead in a park in my hometown, which is weird, because he might well be the only one of us from there for whom the careers guidance actually turned out to be accurate. What else? Trump refused to take the stand in his Stormy Daniels trial. The International Criminal Court has suggested it may issue an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. America said, fuck off. Germany and some others have said, actually, we would probably arrest him. Netanyahu himself has said, it's not really genocide, though, is it? Which is a weird defense that I think he borrowed from literally every dude who has ever committed genocide. It's been a week, guys. They always are. This one was so fucked up, even the dog from Dogecoin thought, fuck this, I'm checking out. He died today. I'm not joking. But anyway, now it's Friday. And here to help me make sense of the senseless once more, here to help me wrap my darkness around your light, in true disappointments fashion, is podcast host, journalist, and podcast producer, Lucy Goddamn Lucraft. Woo!
Hello.
Hello to you. How are you doing, Lucy?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Not drunk enough.
There's time.
There's time. No, well, actually, I've drained my glass.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Whoops.
So you're one ahead of me. Here
Yeah,
was
I
I
know.
thinking, am I being uncouth by, knocking back
Absolutely
at
not. I'd already smashed one to get through
Okay.
bedtime.
Can you... I see any parents that are listening to this would be like, I
Totally
get
understand.
it.
Yeah.
I always say, I am the best father I can be, simultaneously the worst on Friday at usually about 5:30 to 6:30, because
100%.
I'm like placating, just kid glovesing my kid, like, oh, in you go, time to get into bed. But if they fuck around, Lucy, my fuse is like that. I'm like,
mine.
no more messing. Anyway,
Mine too.
so yeah. So what's new since the last time we caught up? Are you still podcast producing? Are you doing more journalism stuff now? What's the happy haps?
So yeah, podcast production full time, and that's been busy. And I've got some awesome clients that I'm working with at the moment. One of whom is the Survivors Trust, who are an amazing not-for-profit who work to support survivors. Really excited about that. And then so just podcast production, zero journalism.
Wow.
Apart
Do you
from
miss the journalism?
Not really. I feel like it's such a part of me that I really get my fix through just the shitstorm that is the news.
Yeah.
Reading it, digesting it, working out angles and stuff to tell my friends, my family. So no, I don't miss it. Not really. It's shit money.
Yeah. I was thinking like the other week, I was like, so I have a day job, like most people who do this sort of stuff. And the day job is like pays all right. It's pretty good salary. And I was thinking, but I do kind of wish that the politics stuff could be like the full-time gig in the same way that, you know, a five-a-side football guy wishes that he was a centre forward or, you know. And I was like, I wonder if it could turn into something. And then I had this alarming thought where I was like, what if there's actually no real way for this to make the same money as like IT, like software development? Do you know what I mean? Like, am I literally chasing something that doesn't exist here?
I don't think so. I think you could make a full-time income with your podcast, particularly with your podcast. You've got the audience, you've got the like you're up and running with it. It's good quality. You've got a community. You've got things set up. So I think you 100% could. I mean, the thing is though, is that just capitalism? Like would it just make it crap? If you were like, this is my full-time job, then you'd be like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. I hate doing it. I mean, maybe not, but I think you could definitely be making a chunk from this. You get some good sponsors.
Well, that's an interesting area that we get into. And I promise people in the chat, we will get into some like politics and satire in a bit. Once we finish talking shop, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like with sponsors come a sort of I guess it depends on the sponsor, right? But it like, do you have a hesitancy to say, so like right now, because it's not my full-time job and I'm not in hock to anyone, I don't have to worry about offending or, you know, upsetting the sponsors. I can say, hey, it's A. Thompson, check out the podcast, by the way, hashtag Tories fuck livestock, right? That's not going to cause me any problems. It's not going to lose me any sponsors. But then if I did suddenly get signed to global radio, or like, you know, if LBC were like, why don't you do what you do, but like on our show at like or station at like 11 o'clock at night, then I would have to tone it down, wouldn't I? And I'd sort of hate myself a bit, I think.
Well, I mean, that's different, isn't it? Because that's not sponsorship. That's like going corporate. That's like taking things corporate, and then you're like changing the format and having to fit in with somebody else's production values and their kind of vision. But like having sponsors, you wouldn't be getting, I don't know, Mothercare to sponsor you, or like the Tory government to sponsor you.
No, I suppose not.
Although you might, they are absolutely crap at their jobs, so I can imagine them plundering billions into your podcast.
Sunak's so there's two things on that. The first thing is that before he announced the general election, I was joking about how he knows the election is coming, so he's spaffing all this money up the wall. Yeah. So if ever there was a good week to ask a billionaire like Sunak for some money, exactly. So there's that. And then there's the other thing. It's like, you know, his campaign team thus far appear to be so fucking shit and clueless that I wouldn't rule it out that they would somehow engage me.
Totally.
Like, could you help us out a bit? I'll be like, okay, yeah, write me a check. Sure. Let's see what happens.
I could see it happening. Also, did you like that segue? Did you like how I segued in there?
Effortless. It was great.
Boom.
People can see you're a pro. So yeah, I don't know, man. What have you made of, like, did the announcement of the general election, did it keep catch you off guard? Were you expecting it?
Well, do you know what? When I saw the announcement, I just ran around everyone I knew via WhatsApp or in the street or mostly to my husband and said, I fucking told you so. And you all said, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I've been saying that I think this will happen. I knew it wasn't going to happen in November.
Yeah.
I just knew it wasn't going to happen in November. I mean, there's, lots of like really sensible commentary that was saying up until a year ago, it's not going to happen in November because there's a huge security risk. So cybersecurity risk of having like the US and the UK elections at the same time. I don't know how much that's true, but also I could not see a way in which this terribly run government, who clearly have so out of touch with reality and also are completely out of touch with each other. Like there's no, I could not see them thinking, I think it's a really good idea if we keep working until November when we know we're going to be obliterated anyway. I knew it was good. So it didn't surprise me at all. But I do think that the fact that it surprised a lot of people and the fact that it was announced, or at least the kind of leaking happened fairly close to when it was announced, I do think that means that we should look another way.
Yeah.
I guess maybe to the post office inquiry, perhaps. I don't know. We should be looking somewhere else because that's normally how it happens, right?
Yeah. I felt like... So I've been hugely wrong in predicting a couple of things about this election. Firstly, the date. I was dead cert that it was going to be in May. I was on here, like on podcasts, and I was like, I just can't see them dragging it out until like, November, January, for some of the reasons that you were touching on. But also, people had said that there was no way that a Conservative administration would put it in the colder months because so much of their their volunteers, their grassroots people would be out in the cold, and they tend to be a lot older. So there was that. But then I kept sort of toing and froing, thinking, well, if I was Sunak and I knew that I was probably on my way out, and I had this support structure all around me, these like the machinations of the Conservative Party, who basically live and die on donors and public money and looting the coffers, why wouldn't I just drag it out for as long as possible and loot as much money? And right up until, what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday he announced it? Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was certain that they were just going to drag it out and drag it out and drag it out. And I think I was following Ian Dunt that day. And even like the day before, he had said, like, it's not going to happen. No, everyone just needs to get back in their box. And then he announced it. And I was like, oh, well, fuck me. Okay. I mean, not that, I sound a little bit disappointed there, but...
No, I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. It's frustrating when you can't work out, like, why. I don't understand why, because you knew you were crap so long ago. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I did have that thought of, like, I could imagine them dragging it out until January, until like the last possible, because they know they're going anyway, so they could just be like, fuck it, let's phone it in, I don't care.
One of my favourite things about this week has been where I think it's Christopher Hope, he's like a Telegraph columnist who writes for Conservative Home as well, I think. And he said, I'm hearing a lot of disquiet, a lot of really unhappy Tory MPs with how this is all unfolded. Firstly, that the announcement was like super amateur and they're really not happy about that. But the second thing was like they feel that they were assured by Rishi Sunak that the general election would not take place until the second half of the year. And it was, I'm not going to rush anything. Like all of these assurances that it wasn't going to happen immediately. There would be no snap election. And now they feel like he's just thrown them to the wolves. So, like, he's just operating on his own sort of self-interest, and he will fly off to America with his millions, and he doesn't give a fuck about them. And I was like, well, yeah, he's a Tory.
Why are you surprised?
Yeah, it really is like the party political or like parliamentary version of the leopard-eating face thing, isn't it?
I mean, it's just lovely karma, isn't it? It's just a lovely little, I like it. Tying it in a bow, like,
I mean, I would like
you're
to say,
all terrible. this is what happens.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I didn't feel a tingle in my bollocks.
I know you did.
There's no point lying about it, Lucy. It's of Schadenfreude, just delicious popcorny Schadenfreude of hearing that this guy has now fucked over some of his own tribe. It's a bit like when Boris Johnson assured the Department of Foreign Aid, DFID, I think they're called, and the guy who he had assured, by this point, Boris Johnson's a well-documented liar, right? But he assured this guy, don't worry, DFID is totally safe. And then he went out and pulled the plug on it, completely cancelled the funding. And this guy gave an interview, and he was like, I don't understand it. He looked me right in my face, and he said, don't worry, DFID is safe. I'm just blown away. It's like, how does it feel?
Yeah.
I've just had a super chat from somebody, from Puninator. He's in here every week. What's up, Pun? He says, I think it was announced so Sunak has time to enroll his kids in a California school.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. But also, I mean, the thing is, those kind of admin little foibles, he doesn't have to worry about that. We have to worry about stuff like that. Like, oh, God, yeah, better look for the house before the September. Rishi Sunak doesn't have to worry about that. He doesn't care about schedule. Time is meaningless to him. He can buy time.
Well, also,
but it kind of does make sense.
Didn't he? So I was writing quite a lengthy thread about Sunak, about some of the things that get swept under the rug and people forget about. Like they often characterize him as, sort of pragmatic, ex-city. Like he says he voted Brexit, but people feel like he might have just been
I know,
telling porkies about that. They paint a picture of him being a certain type of conservative, and
like a liberal conservative.
Yeah. One Nation Tory, they call it.
One Nation Tory, yeah.
And whilst I was writing this thread about all of the weird, callous, self-centered stuff that he's done, I happened across that story from a couple of years ago where he donated $3 million of his own money to this American tech college. And then there's a primary school in his own constituency that were trying to raise money to fix a roof. And he turned up with a £10 bottle of wine. He was like, here you go, you can put that in your tombola. I was like, number one, this is the kind of guy you're dealing with. He just doesn't give a fuck. So there's that. Then the second thing is, now that we're talking about him moving over to the States, it would be really fucking interesting to find out if that tech college that he's donated to is in the area that people think he's going to move to.
Oh, yeah, interesting. I mean, it would totally make sense, wouldn't it?
Well, because then it's it doesn't really matter if he moves over there in September or whatever, because they'd be like, oh, look, he paid us $3 million. The least we can do is
let his kids in.
Month 8. Yeah. So I don't know. But anyway, it's not all about Sunak this week. Obviously, he's had, not the best of starts. It's also a little bit about Keir Starmer. How are you feeling about Labour coming in? Are you excited by Labour?
Oh, do you know what? Over the past year, less than the past year, I have gone from being a Labour Party member, pretty much my whole adult life. I was diehard Labour forever. And then...
Tattoo?
Of course. No, absolutely not. I love Jeremy Corbyn. Really loved him. That was kind of the time that I was most excited about politics.
We're going to get onto him in a minute. Yeah.
Excuse me. Labour has really got to my throat. But Keir Starmer, man, no. And actually just the Labour Party in general. I just cannot with Keir Starmer. And the thing that... So I'm so frustrated because I will not be voting Labour.
Right. Is this on moral?
Yeah.
Something specific that they've done that you don't like, or let's talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, Keir Starmer, the human rights lawyer's stance on Gaza and the whole party stance on Gaza, but his particular stance on Gaza really highlighted to me and opened my eyes to just how much of a prick he is.
Right.
And then, of course, you know, looking at Rachel Reeves, her kind of austerity, I don't know, her red austerity. I don't know what they stand for. I don't know what Keir Starmer stands for.
So let's peel this onion a little bit. So with Gaza, do you feel like it's, and I'm not, you know, either one way or the other, I'm not really sure if I've made my mind up where their morality and drivers sit, but for you, does it feel like he just doesn't care about Gaza, or do you think it's more like he's playing the political game to get into office and then he can actually flex a bit more of the ethics muscles, or what do you think is going on?
I think it's really difficult. So my giving him the benefit of the doubt, that's probably what I would have said. And my own MP, Peter Kyle, who is a frontbencher, he's, I can't remember, he's like Shadcab something. I can't remember what he is now. He's on a few different ministerial roles. They are so, yeah, so I would have said, okay, you're just biding your time to get in. But actually, I don't think that's the case anymore. Now I realise when you look at the money from Israeli kind of lobbyists that has gone into Keir Starmer's pocket and the amount of times that him and people like David Lammy have been taken to Israel, now I think, oh, it's a little bit more sinister. Sinister in the sense that, oh, actually, you just don't give a fuck about Arabs.
Right.
And as an Arab, that's what turned it for me, because he's a human rights lawyer. So it's not a case of, oh, you know, you actually don't know that much about human rights. And so when he made that misstep when he kind of showed himself to the world in that LBC interview with Nick Ferrari, when he was asked, does Israel have a right to defend itself? And he said, this is the thing that actually made me the most sick. Israel has a right to defend herself. Like, no, come on, let's not categorize countries as women. And he was asked specifically, oh, so they can cut off food, water, electricity. And he said, yes, they have a right to defend themselves. That is actually a clear breach of international law. And like, he couldn't say, oh, I didn't know that actually. He was head of the CPS. He's a human rights lawyer. He knew. So
yeah,
for me, it's a hard no.
I fully understand where you're coming from on that. I feel like if you pan out of that interview and you think to yourself, okay, well, look, if I'm the leader of the opposition and I know that the best thing for this country, and weirdly by proxy for us, like for Gaza from a geopolitical standpoint, for the UK, like if I know that to get into power I have to tread super carefully against the backdrop of the Corbyn anti-Semitism, Labour have an anti-Semitism problem, it's got to be rooted out, blah blah blah, if I know I've got to tiptoe around that on eggshells, maybe that is what you have to do. I'm just sort of playing devil's advocate here. Like if he had said Israel are completely out of order, the second he had said, but he wouldn't have even got to the end of the sentence. Like Ferrari, the Daily Mail, the Express, everyone would have been like, see, same old Labour, anti-Semitism, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then you'd be in a situation where the Tories remain in power, and then what actual change can you affect? Is anything going to... Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do understand that. And I think he's gone very hard in trying to rid the Labour Party of anything even remotely Corbynite. Too hard, I would say. However, what I would counter with that is the Labour Party also have a demonstrable problem with Islamophobia. They've had reports about it. But that doesn't seem to be something that worries him when he's making these kind of statements, you know? So it's difficult to excuse him in any way, shape or form. Yes, I understand the fear of being called an anti-Semite, but that comes down to he doesn't want to lose his job. He is so motivated by his career that he would rather say the most ridiculous things, because how could he not know that what he was saying was actually factually incorrect and was going to backfire on him?
Yeah.
And then also gaslight us and say that's actually not what I said. Like,
Yeah.
babe, literally, we've got it on camera. So
it's like when politicians go like, I haven't heard this recently, but I did hear this a lot in the Johnson days, where somebody would do something wrong, they wouldn't apologise for it, but then the cabinet ministers would go out on the rounds, and then they would go like, look, it was wrong, and he's since apologised for it. And it's like, no,
let's move on. But where's the apology?
Yeah, you've said that he's apologised for it. He hasn't actually said sorry. He might have said, oh, it was regrettable.
Yes.
That it's possible somewhere regretted it, but
yeah.
probably not me. Let's move on to Corbyn. So Corbyn has announced, I believe, that he's standing as an independent, right? In Islington.
Yes, yeah. And Andrew Feinstein is standing against Keir Starmer as an independent.
Oh, really?
Do you know that?
No.
This is very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And is there some sort of weight behind this? It's basically like Starmer. I'm smiling because I've just remembered a tweet that I saw yesterday from Alexandra Haddow, a wonderful comedian. You should go and check her out. Anyone that's in the chat and stuff. Alexandra Haddow like quote tweeted somebody yesterday. It said, "What happens if Labour win the election but Keir Starmer loses his seat?" And she quote tweets it and goes like, "We all come."
That would be my best case scenario in many ways.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I hope that Labour get in. I would feel better about it if, weirdly, it was a hung parliament. I'm not going to lobby for a hung parliament because I think it's too dangerous, too risky. But I wouldn't be sad if that was the end game, and they were forced into a coalition with like Lib Dems and Greens.
Yeah,
I think then we would get proportional representation.
Yeah,
probably more quickly, right? But yeah, it's strange. Like the narrative that's come out recently is like, nobody has any real enthusiasm for Keir Starmer. You hear that a lot out in conservative circles, and it's like, yeah, but it's not really a campaigning strategy, is it? It's like there's no enthusiasm for him, but they just hate you cunts so much.
I have so much enthusiasm for hating the Tories.
Yeah.
I interrupted you. Sorry, you were talking about Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh yes, yeah. Sorry.
Jezza.
Good old Jezza. So he's standing as an independent. Somebody else you mentioned is standing as an independent against Starmer.
Andrew Feinstein, yeah.
Okay, so is there like a movement behind this? Is like,
yeah,
you try to unseat like high profile Labour people? Is it
realistic,
do we think? Or
I think, well, for Jeremy Corbyn, yeah, absolutely, of course it's realistic. But for Andrew Feinstein, I think there's somebody actually that I've been involved with helping in my constituent, in my ward, in Hove, in Brighton and Hove,
yeah,
who is standing as an independent, like as a protest vote. And I think people are actually so sick of being told, like, oh, it's like Keir Starmer, all the Tories, it's Labour, all the Tories. And some of us have really shit Labour MPs who voted against the ceasefire or who voted against things that we really believe in to like toe the party line because there's been a 3-line whip because Keir Starmer, and that feels really uncomfortable. And so I think there is like a movement, and especially for Gen Z, of, yeah, actually, fuck this. Let's get some independent people who, yeah, okay, they're not going to get as many votes to unseat people, but how scary will it be for the incumbent or for the Labour candidate?
Like if
Andrew Feinstein is interesting as well because he served as an MP under Nelson Mandela, and he is Jewish. And he has family who died in that. So I think he is, and he's pro-Palestine, he is a triple threat and to Keir Starmer. So I think there is, I don't think he'll beat him, but I would fucking love it if he did. I think it would be wonderful.
I feel like, so I'm kind of married to this idea that in a first past the post paradigm, your choices are basically blue or red.
Yeah.
And I wish that it wasn't like that. But I feel like if you want a fairer voting system, you're more likely to get that with Labour. than you are the Tories.
But
so
based
if you're
on what?
forced, based on having a line in to like the Labour Party, like so a few of us
They haven't shown any kind of desire to push proportional representation.
Well, they've had a vote on it, haven't they, at their conference, and it was like there was overwhelming support for it. Then I think I mean, this sort of plays into the anti-Starmer narrative a bit. I believe that at the most recent Labour conference, they said we're not having a vote on that. And yeah, it sort of it concerns me that if they do win a sort of relatively healthy majority, that they will just look at it like, oh well, now look, we can win majorities because the people hate Tories, so that's now's our time to do what. And I sort of feel like, no, you guys, you're always going to be on the back foot, and here's why: it's just that the mathematics of parliamentary politics in this country. Here's how it will work, right? The Tories are seen as the natural party of government, rightly or wrongly, mostly because the newspapers all just salivate and fawn over them. So they're seen as the natural party of government. Then every now and then everyone gets really fed up with all the privatisation failing and the looting and the corruption and the lying and everything, and then they give Labour a chance. And Labour come in. But the problem with Labour is that people who are engaged on the Labour side of things, I feel, perhaps arrogantly, perhaps completely like there's no foundation to it, I feel like they are actually more interested in politics.
Yeah.
And then when Labour falls short, if they start playing the same donor whip structure, the corruption, trying to appease big money donors or whatever, or not following through on the things that they're promising, people like me, Super Tansky, Davy Moo, like whoever, we turn on them immediately. We're just like, no, this is fucking bullshit. Like, what are you playing at? And then they've got it from both sides. They've got like the Fleet Street right, they've got the fascist right, they've got every faction of the Conservative Party, but they've also got people on their own side. It's a really short fucking honeymoon for a Labour Party that get into power and then don't start talking about like.
But that is the natural way of things because we don't have power. So the reason that you think that about Labour voters, in that we are engaged with politics, we are the most critical, is because we don't have the power. That we can't just sit. We actually don't have stuff like our life needs to be made better by politics. That's why we're engaged in politics. But we're also, I suppose, a lot of us are like privileged, middle class, educated, whatever. So, but it's not like on the Tory side where you can just vote when you're a boomer or whatever, you can switch from Labour to Tory as you get older, because that's the whole thing, isn't it? That traditionally, as you get older, you have wealth and you need to conserve your wealth, hence why you then switch from Labour to Tory. But that isn't a thing anymore.
No. So,
of course, we're going to be critical because actually we need them to like help us out because we've suffered under a Tory government.
But then then when we look at things like Rachel Reeves' austerity light, what would so let's say the Green Party got in, or let's say the Lib Dems got in, or like whoever, what would you want to see that is not being reflected in the Labour policy portfolio at the moment as an alternative to that?
God, it's so hard, isn't it?
I mean, it's like I look at the national debt, and I'm just like, I don't see, like, with an aging population, with a shrinking, like, younger, and like immigration is like everyone's talking about just moving immigration lower and lower, smaller and smaller numbers. So if you don't have immigrants, you don't have people having babies, and you've got this aging population, how do you service that with social care and NHS? It's like either taxes go up or the state shrinks. And so you've got Rachel Reeves there going like, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do. And then you've got people like you and me who, understandably were upset because you need those public services to service the vulnerable in society.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the fucking answer is because everyone's like, oh, we should rejoin the EU and get the growth back. I'm like, look at the fucking Eurozone, man. It's not... I wish it was like, that's my utopian, like, liberal... fantasy is that we rejoin the EU and then we get growth and then we can afford public services, we get immigration back or whatever. But it like none of the actual figures seem to stack up like that for me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I have a very different view to you on probably the national growth front, because I am very socialist. So to my mind, it's not necessarily about having like huge national growth. It's about everybody having enough and not having, because we could easily support the whole country if we were just taxing the people that needed to be taxed. We could easily do that. We just could. Like that's proven. Like we could do that. But nobody's going to do that, because the people that are in power are they're in power. They're like mates with those people. So of course they're not going to tax them. Labour, Tories, whatever. The only people that are going to do that are people that are like so ridiculous, like Jeremy Corbyn, who, when I say ridiculous, I love him, but also as a politician, people find him ridiculous. And that's probably because he has that socialist utopia, and that's what I believe as well. So I don't know. My answer is not going to be a good one for you, because I have very different opinions.
No, I think it's like, weirdly, we're probably on the same track in terms of like tackling things like tax avoidance. I mean, everyone's seen the pie chart that was doing the rounds like a couple of years ago, where they were like, look, benefit fraud is this figure.
Oh yeah, and like
here's
nothing.
Tax avoidance over here. It's like hundreds of billions of pounds.
Yeah.
And you know, if they did address that, maybe it's possible that you could support all of the people that need it.
But it's not maybe it's possible. You could.
Okay.
You could.
But is there any credence? And I don't know if there is or not. I'm just, you know, thought showering.
I've got a weird visual now, and I don't feel good about it. But yeah, continue with the thought shower.
But like, okay, so if you have the City of London, which is the global financial centre, or at least was until shortly after Brexit, all the banks are here. If you have, and that's your main industry, right? Financial services, that's the bread and butter for the UK economy now. And then you say, oh, and we're the global capital of money laundering. You can't forget the money laundering. And then you say, right, party's over. Here comes the hangover. And you say, right, okay, we're gonna heavily tax, like no more tax avoidance. We're gonna like level up the HMRC. We're gonna do investigations. We're gonna let this guy off. This guy over here that was selling on Vinted, we're gonna let him off now. He's fine. But you cunts, you like 12 billion. Are you kidding? So they go after all of these guys. Is there a case to be made? And again, I will stress, I don't fucking know. But is there a case to be made that if you did do that, financial services as the bread and butter, and all of these asset management companies, that they would fuck off, and then we honestly would not have like a bread and butter industry. We would be fucked.
But I suppose the flip side to that, yeah, there is that argument. But the flip side to that is that when everybody else, the reason that they are the bread and butter is because they're the only people that are paid enough to live and incentivized to do their job. The rest of us can't afford anything. And like for the majority of women who have children, we're pushed out of the workforce and actually taxed for even working, and then also told by Jeremy Hunt we need to get back to fucking work, despite the fact that it costs us more than we would take home. So it wouldn't. This is the thing, man. You know what I mean? Like other industries would rise up. Yeah,
I suppose it's the argument of, so like years ago, I did a podcast with a couple of comedians, and one of them was ranting about like, you know, what will we do if the rich leave? And he like immediately exploded. He was like, just tell them to fuck off. Just fuck off. He was like, the idea that, you know, if Starbucks like upped and left the UK, that we couldn't like create our own Great British coffee shop franchise is fucking lunacy. Yeah. And it is, you know, we could do that. And it always, I think I mentioned this, you know, before on another episode, but it's always funny to me that when we talk about leaving the EU and we say, well, what are we going to do about the hospitality staff? What are we going to do about the vets? and the doctors and the teachers that we get in from the EU. People are always like, well, we'll just get our own teachers and nurses. But the second that anyone talks about billionaires, it's like, what if the billionaires leave? It's like, oh, I guess we're fucked then.
We're screwed.
Yeah.
The rest of us could never. We bow down to them.
Yeah. But just to go back to your childcare comment there. Yeah, I mean that's a bugbear. So me and my girlfriend frequently rant about this, where she runs a business from home, and it's it takes up a bit of her time, but she could basically she's sort of stunted in her career, like business from home. And I'm always like, well, you could look at is there a job locally or something? We were looking at local jobs, and literally zero of them pay enough to compensate for the childcare that it would cost to get her to work and back. It's like, where's the incentive? Like, all of these people going oh, it's economically inactive people and we've got to get people back to work. It's like, then fucking pay them.
Yeah. Exactly that. It's ridiculous. I mean, you could do a whole podcast just talking about this. Maybe me and Lucy should do that podcast, just whinging about it.
To lose.
Yeah.
The Lucy Show. Yeah. Oh, I've just noticed I've got another super chat, also from Puninator.
Oh, hi, Puninator.
He says, as for Corbyn, I've done a full 180 on him. He, along with my granddad and Sanders, got me into politics. I loved him, but the more that I learn about him, the less I trust him. I still support his policies, though. I feel like, from my perspective, so I rooted for him when he was firstly in the leadership competition, the leadership,
the race. I mean, they call
process.
It the race, so yeah.
And then I came to the conclusion through the anti-Semitism stuff, not that he was an anti-Semite. I felt like a lot of that was tabloid character assassination. But I came to the conclusion that he was not a leader that was capable of handling that sort of situation. And if he was not, he probably wasn't the right guy for that job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have such complicated feelings about it, because he can be quite childish when questioned about things, and he can sometimes refuse to see his faults. And I think sometimes he doesn't acknowledge that he is a white man, a cis white man with blind spots. Yes, he has a storied history of being a staunch anti-racist, and I do not think he's an anti-Semite. I don't think he's been anti-Semitic. However, I think that he can be so kind of bloody-minded in his knowledge of his own intentions that I think he can refuse to be humble about it and go, actually, do you know what, hands up, I'm really sorry. Obviously, I've offended some people, or let's actually look at... But on the whole, I would say he's still better than Starmer, because if you look at Starmer as well, I don't think he displays any better characteristics in the face of being told that he is being offensive to literally all Arab people.
Yeah. With Starmer, I get the feeling he's playing politics more.
Yeah, of course.
And people can interpret that their own way, I suppose. Like, some people would say, well, that's hugely disingenuous, and that's the last thing that we want in number 10, is another politician that's willing to superficially wrap themselves in plastic and cellophane to get what they want. That's not a good character trait. I always go back to the same thing. I'm like, yeah, but what would you rather? You're more likely to get policy X, Y, and Z in with this group of people, I think, than that one. Anyway, but with Corbyn, I think, yeah, like there was an interview he gave, I think, to Lewis Goodall on the Newsagents.
I think we talked about it, didn't we?
Was that last time you were on?
No, I think we talked about it kind of offline, but yeah.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
I thought it was really eye-opening that I thought Lewis Goodall was quite fair on him. You know, he pushed him, he challenged him, but I thought it was a fair interview.
Yeah.
And he said something like, sort of similar to what you're alluding to, like, is it possible that you were just so convinced of, like, through your history, through the various causes that you have stood up for, that you were so backed up by that stuff, that you did have a blind spot, that you imagined that you could never be deemed offensive or that things could be misconstrued. And from memory, you know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't think he was willing to accept that. I feel like there was a sort of bloody-mindedness to him. But yeah,
I suppose the only thing I would say in his defense there is that anybody who has been engaged in the Palestinian cause for any length of time or been engaged in any kind of anti-racism work, but particularly the Palestinian cause for any length of time, will have been hit with the Zionist playbook, which is literally a script. Like, first, you're an anti-Semite. Second, you know,
so do you think that's ending?
You did it first.
I was thinking about this earlier. Like, so the amount of flack that Netanyahu's had, like, over the last couple of weeks, right, is not like anything I've seen in terms of criticism of Israel or an Israeli prime minister in my lifetime. So I feel like, are those days sort of coming to an end now? Like, has he just run out of road in terms of, you know, this bombing? They're digging up rubble where there's like bodies of people when they're like, you know, sorry, trigger warning, etc., and all of that. But it's important that you guys hear this stuff. Like, they've found bodies of people in Gaza where their hands are tied behind their back. They've obviously been taken prisoner, shot, buried, and then Israel or Netanyahu or whoever his spokespeople are like, oh, no, it's because like Hamas are hiding in there. It's like, no, you're clearly rounding people up, imprisoning them and killing them.
And children as well, we should say.
Yeah.
Children, elderly people. It's not just
some of the stuff that's going
Hamas-aged
on.
people.
Yeah, it's just, and so much of this stuff has now sort of exploded on the internet that people understand what is going on out there. And now the ICC have said that they may issue arrest warrants for him. And he's saying sort of similar again to what you're tapping into. He's like, oh, well, this is anti-Semitism. He's drawing parallels with this, with the Holocaust, which is like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, these are not the same things, Benji. What are you doing? So I feel like now it's more okay to call this out for what it is, which is, you know, state-sponsored killing, right? It doesn't mean that. Okay, here's a question for you. What does it make you think when you criticize Israeli state military activity, and then somebody says to you, "Oh, you just hate Jewish people. This is anti-Semitism."
So I went on pro-Palestine marches when I was a child. I'm Arab, so I'm very used to those kind of criticisms, and it doesn't affect me now, particularly because I know the truth, in that I know enough Jewish people and huge Jewish organizations. I know enough about the Torah and about the Jewish faith and like their views on Israel. And I know enough about Zionism to understand that the two are not symmetrical, like they're not the same. Something that a lot of people I think don't know, and are always shocked when I tell them this, is that there are more Christian Zionists than there are Jews, full stop.
Right.
There are, like, I just want people to think about that. There are more Christian Zionists than there are Jews at all. So when a Zionist tells you you're anti-Semitic, you can confidently pause and say, I think maybe that's not true, unless you're being anti-Semitic. Because Zionism, the idea that a home for a people who have no, or a land for people, whatever it, you know, their slogan is, that is Israel's slogan is rooted in like the idea of a theocratic ethno-state, and that Israel are the only democracy in the Middle East. Like those two cannot be true, because you cannot have a theocratic ethno-state and a democracy. Like the two, it's not possible. You can't have both. And so that in itself, and the other thing that I've just said about there's more Christian Zionists than there are Jews at all, should tell you that criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic, and to suggest that it is, not to be all meta, but to suggest that it is anti-Semitic in and of itself, because you're erasing the hundreds of thousands of Jews who find the state of Israel abhorrent, who come out and protest in support of Palestine, who do not believe in Zionism, and who are being made unsafe because of Benjamin Netanyahu. Fundamentally, they are being made incredibly unsafe.
How do you think this is going to end? Do you think he'll be overthrown? Do you think he'll be removed?
Well, I mean, he's a massive problem for the US. And so ultimately, this is why he's longing this out. It's because he knows that as soon as he stops, he's got nowhere to go. He's going to be out of the Likud party, or at least he won't be president anymore. I mean, I don't know how this ends for him. Not well.
See,
him and Yoav Galant,
I feel like, so obviously you know way more than I do about this. I've only really been familiar with with this layer of geopolitics for the last, since October the 7th, right? But it seems to me, from a hugely unqualified perspective or vantage point, it seems to me like if you've got Hamas who don't recognize the state of Israel and want Israel wiped off the map, and then you've got Israel who don't appear to believe in the rights of people in Gaza and the West Bank, surely you've got to remove both of those, right? Like, you can't have, if everybody agrees that, or most sane people are like, look, you're going to need a two-state solution where ideally both are democracies and they live side by side and they're never going to get on, but at least they're stable. If that's the end goal that we're trying to get to, and neither one of these current powers that are ruling these states are respectful of the other one's right to exist, then both of them have to go, which means America and or the UK, the West, have to remove Netanyahu. But then if you remove Netanyahu, would you just have another Netanyahu coming up? Like,
yeah,
is it that deep?
There is pretty much no left wing. It's not. It doesn't.
Really?
There's no. Yeah, not in Israel. The propaganda starts before they arrive in the country. When people come on birthright trips, they've already had the propaganda fed to them. I mean, I don't know if you know Abby Martin, but her work, she's amazing. She's really, she's incredible. And she did a documentary quite a few years back, 7 or 8 years, where she explored the West Bank, Gaza, Israel as well. And the thing that always stuck out to me that I found so intensely shocking, because even I didn't know this at the time, was when she interviewed 17, 18, Vox Pop style Israelis. And the way they would talk about Arabs was like nothing you would imagine, like literally calling for them, laughing and saying, oh, we need to kill all the Arabs, the Arabs are terrible. And that is something that I think people don't really understand. It's not just Netanyahu that's the problem. If he goes, you're absolutely right. Somebody else will be right underneath him, waiting to take. Yeah, maybe less right wing, but not really.
But it's like, so I remember watching a video about this, and we're actually running a little bit low on time here. But I remember watching a video about this. Must have been like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was somebody doing one of these. Do you remember that there was that sort of period of internet, not pranks, but social experiments? And somebody went to Israel with their friend, who's a Westerner, but looked Arab. And it was like two sort of teenage guys. One was obviously Jewish, and the other one was obviously Arab, in the right headgarms. And they walked down the street together, like arm in arm, and they were like laughing and joking with each other. And then the video was like filming the reactions of the people, just people like walking by. And it was like floor-jawing. Like, all of these people were just like, what the fuck is he doing with that Arab kid? Like, it was so weird and foreign. It's like, can you imagine that in the UK? Like, if a white guy and a black guy walk down the street and they're like laughing arm in arm, nobody would give a fuck, right? But So when you look at it through that prism, that context, it's so jarring. It's like, are you guys really still like that?
But yeah, like when people say it's an apartheid state, they're not joking. It's
Yeah.
an apartheid state.
Nutty. Okay, let's try and lighten things up a little bit as we round off the episode. By the way, guys, if you've got any questions for Lucy or for myself before we round up, then now is a good time to chuck them in the live chat. Let's drag this kicking and screaming back to UK politics, not to the general election. I just want to get your thoughts on a story that has amused me somewhat today. There is a footballer or ex-footballer by the name of Joseph Barton. Joey Barton is, I believe, I'm going from memory here, he was charged for domestic assault. I
thought this was supposed to be light. This is the light part.
It gets
I was
funnier.
like, lol. No, yeah.
No, he's charged for domestic assault. He was charged for, I think, headbutting somebody in the face. He's got like a nice catalogue of sterling behaviour and conduct behind him. Anyway, this was going back about 2 or 3 months now. He got into trouble for disparaging a female ITV Sport commentator. ITV Sport had to then say he doesn't speak for us, blah, 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 because he was like, oh, basically his point was like, women shouldn't be presenting football or whatever.
Classic.
Yeah, Jeremy Vine invited him onto his show, and then he took a dislike to Jeremy Vine and called him on Twitter a bike nonce. And I remember seeing this and seeing his comments about ITV Sport, calling them like paedophile protectors or something like that. I was like, wow, somebody really wants to get sued this morning. I remember saying like that day, I was like, Joey Barton is about to learn a really difficult lesson in libel and slander law. And people were like, how would you know that? You're not a liar. And I just saw today before we jumped on, and a judge has ruled that what he said was libelous. So
Shocking.
I wasn't right about the general election date.
You
I
nailed
wasn't right
it on
about
this.
Nigel Farage standing, but I was fucking right about Joey Barton.
Oh, did you see that Michael Gove is not standing?
Yes, I did. What do you think that's about? Do you think he's worried about losing his seat, or do you think he's like, I've had
Yeah.
enough?
I think probably he's worried about losing his seat.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Or maybe he's got like a juicy side gig coming up in America with Rishi.
Oh, they all go to America, don't they? Truss, Rishi, Farage.
Vile.
Yeah, I was saying on the solo show in the midweek, I was like, can we just like leave like a breadcrumb trail of like temporary American visas?
Yeah.
Just lead them all away. Bye, guys.
Make them come back on small boats. That's what I think we should do. Across the
Yes.
Atlantic.
Well, I was joking like earlier in the week. I was like, can we, get them on the plane, then fly them off to Rwanda would be perfect. But it's always the Patriots, isn't it? They love Britain until they don't. It's weird.
Yeah.
Somebody's just popped in the chat like, Farage is vile.
Oh, correct.
Let me see if I've got any questions here. If we've got anything to field to Lucy. Aid Gove is stepping down at the election. Yeah, thanks very much to Jez. Joey Barton is a plank. Again, insightful commentary tonight.
Yeah, totally passes the vibe check.
Yeah. Puninator says, Lucy, if you could pick one policy for Labour to implement when in power, what would it be?
I would pick universal basic income.
Mm.
That's what I would pick.
I would go for PR, because then I think you're more likely to get UBI after PR. And press reg. I'd like press regulation.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That would be good.
Would you
But
trust a politician to bring in that policy, though?
I would if they empower me with the regulatory powers.
Fine, okay.
And then I would burn down the Daily Mail
Yes.
and the Express.
Yeah. Kill Rupert Murdoch.
What else have we got? We got some of these I'm not going to read out.
Are they rude?
Somebody's Somebody's saying, like, it gets funnier than domestic assault. I think that's a reference to Joey Barton then getting
fine,
sued for libel. Richard Marsden, one of my Patreons. What's up, Rich? He says, did you see Mukhtar post on him today? I assume that means Joey Barton. I didn't, actually. Darian says, hit the like button. Yes, please, guys. If you've been watching, if you're enjoying the paper reviews that I put out and the podcast, do remember to hit the like and drop a comment. Will we ever know who the 50 Tory MPs being investigated for sexual abuse are?
Yes, that is a good comment.
I feel like there's way too much secrecy in parliamentary politics. Like, we have to put in these anonymous letters to declare our lack of confidence in the... Can't you just come out and say it?
I know, just say it to my face.
Yeah. Or like the 3-line whip stuff. That's a change I would like to see.
Yes.
Brought in. No more donors, no more whips. Just vote with your conscience. If the idea is not morally sound, or it doesn't make sense economically or politically or whatever, you'll find out. It'll come out in the wash.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's a good one. You've got some good policies. You should stand against Keir Starmer in Camden.
I've taken way too many drugs, Lucy. There's like Polaroids of me with cocaine stuffed up my nostrils. It's
tricky.
Like,
but that's fine, because you're gonna like burn down the press.
I guess if I burnt down the press, they probably wouldn't care so much about the cocaine up the nostrils.
Yeah, they'd be fine.
That would be the main story.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Right, like let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much for to my guest tonight, Lucy Lucraft. Go and seek her out. Go and check her out. Her What She Said podcast. She produced. I can't talk now. I've had 2 beers, Lucy. I'm already tongue tied. I can't. It's all gone.
It's Friday.
If you are interested in starting a podcast, get in touch with her. She produces them. And she's given me lots of advice and guidance over the last... How long have we been talking now? Is it like a year?
Yeah, a couple of years, I think.
Something like that. So she knows what she's talking about. Go and give her a follow. I will be back next Tuesday or Wednesday with the solo show. Those always go out to Patreons and YouTube community backers first. And then I'll be back next Friday night, maybe with a guest, maybe not. I haven't decided yet. But yeah, that's it.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming on, Lucy. Right. Ta-ta to everybody. Take care. Keep it booge. We're out this motherfucker.